These are some of the best aimers in the world, and they're doing something weird when performing in different aiming tasks. Can you spot it? They're switching between mousepads. Why? Are the differences between pads that significant? And how exactly do they affect our aim in-game? The most notable property of a pad is speed. Usually sluggish, cloth, often labeled as control pads, are on the lower end of the spectrum, while on the opposing side are glass pads, which are extremely fast and frictionless. It's like sliding your mouse across glass. Mousepads have many properties, all of which are linked in some way. Texture can influence the initial friction of a pad or how the pad feels, both on your arm and on your mouse gates. Friction has an influence in a direct link with speed. The less friction there is, the faster the mouse will travel. Friction can also influence the pad's stopping power. The thickness of a pad can also influence stopping power. At the end of the day, all of these properties and more are connected. But who really cares? Some aiming scenarios or games call for or demand more of a specific property. In TAC FPS games, for example, you can benefit a lot from having a level of friction and more stopping power. Or in a tracking-heavy game like Apex, having a smooth, consistent, and somewhat low-friction feel might help you track better. However, we shouldn't overthink this, as technique and practice play a much bigger part. Furthermore, these are general guidelines, and not rules to never be broken. There are always exceptions and outliers, players who can excel using unorthodox configurations. Some are even able to perform extremely well with glass pads in TAC FPS games. So, given that some pads are better in some situations than others, one big problem arises. Let's say you're in a situation or a game that calls for more than one type of aim. It could be tracking a target for a duration and then flicking onto another target just for one click. In a situation like this, it would benefit a lot from a low friction and smooth feel for the tracking part, but have a harder time stopping our mouse for the click. The same can be said if it was the other way around. Which begs the question, is there a balanced pad? One which can just about compete or excel in all of the corresponding aiming categories and situations. Realistically speaking, no pad will ever excel at all of these variables, since some of these have a direct and negative correlation. It becomes a balancing act of different properties. In this context, your mousepad is much like your sensitivity in a way. It's a tool that can be changed if the situation calls for it. That being said, there are somewhat balanced sensitivities that are able to compete in a wider set of tasks or situations. Is there a balanced pad that can do the same? One that is able to perform well in all aiming situations? A jack of all trades? In my opinion, this is as close as it gets. This is the Artisan Zero Mid. Mid is referring to the pad's thickness. Over the years, I tried a lot of Artisan pads. Artisan is a Japanese manufacturer known for producing really high quality pads that aren't affected much by humidity and tend to last a very long time. The Zero Soft is one of, if not their most popular pads, and it's a control pad. However, it's not as slow as traditional control pads. In my experience, the Zero Soft felt very solid for TAC FPS games, but its thickness made it so it lacked the smoothness and consistency that the Artisan Raiden had, for example. However, I believe the mid version of this pad offers an absurd amount of balance in all categories. It has a decent amount of stopping power, the texture feels smooth, it's flatter than the soft version, which makes it feel more consistent. The friction is on the lower end and it's not overwhelming. It feels as if this pad can perform regardless of the task at hand. In reality, the subject is much more complicated, and even the individual experience of a pad can heavily depend on other external factors as well, like the weight of the mouse used, how long a person has had the pad for, or even the mouse gates used. And aiming as a skill is also much more complicated and nuanced than just clicking or dragging, which could potentially emphasize the importance of having a more balanced pad as well. Furthermore, even top aimers don't always agree with each other, and information regarding aim constantly evolves. I used to get my best scores when swapping between the Zero Soft and the Raiden Mid, depending on the situation. But ever since I got the Zero Mid, I don't feel like I have to swap. In my opinion, the Artisan Zero Mid deserves much more recognition, and I'm curious as to what other people might think of it if they gave it a shot. If you're only going to play specific games that require a very limited part of aim, you could go for something more suited. However, if I'm ever unsure about what aiming situations I might find myself in, or if I'm looking for balance and overall aim, I know what pad I'm picking.